Hey guys, this video is going to be a review of the first half of season 6 of Supernatural, and I just yesterday went back and looked to see when the last time I had filmed a Supernatural review was, and it's been 5 months. The last video review I did for Supernatural was the second half of season 4, and then I ended up reviewing all of season 5 on my blog, so it's been forever, and it doesn't actually feel like it's been that long though, which is weird. Anyway, I feel like a lot happened in these 11 episodes. Like the first 11 episodes of season 6 seemed really packed with stuff, so I'm going to talk about some of the bigger things that I remember. At the beginning of this season, Dean is living with Lisa and Ben, and I knew that that was going to happen. That was like a spoiler that I feel like that was like the last spoiler I really had. I do have some brief, kind of vague ideas of what happens in future seasons, but I feel like that was like the last thing where I was really aware of what was going on, but I didn't know that that was coming before it happened. And the only reason I really want to bring it up is because they were living in Indiana, and as stupid as it is, I live in Indiana, so anytime anything takes place in Indiana, I get stupidly excited about it. So I thought that was cool. It's also interesting that there was a year time skip. I kind of liked that, and just the idea of Sam being on his own for a year and Dean being on his own for a year and everything like that. But I thought that it was interesting that they decided to do that. I was also aware that Sam lost his soul, so I was aware throughout this entire these entire 11 episodes of what was going on. I didn't have to wait for that to be revealed on the show because I already knew it, but I did not know that their grandfather came back to life until he showed up, so I really wasn't expecting that. And that was interesting, and it kind of sucks that how that ended up playing out. I have to say that Crowley was one of my favorite parts of these episodes. I really like when he shows up, and I really like episodes he's in. There's an episode in these 11 episodes that was about skinwalkers becoming family pets, namely dogs, and they were supposed to be sleeper cells, and they were gonna turn the families and everything, and that was somewhat creepy. The idea of it is I would hate to think that our dogs are actually supernatural creatures and whatnot, but for me, that episode was interesting because the really creepy aspect of the episode for me wasn't even the supernatural part. It was the fact that the guy was in love with the mom and the family, and he killed her husband. The husband was creepy and a terrible person, but the skinwalker and just his obsession with the mom was the really creepy part, and it wasn't even necessarily the supernatural aspect of this episode. Cass has a quote in one of the episodes, I don't even remember which one because I didn't write it down, but it's, "Dean and I do share a more profound bond. I wasn't going to mention it." I had heard that quote before this, and I think I'd actually seen the clip of it before this, and so I was just excited to get to that quote because I get happy when I reach things that I already knew about. It's just exciting for me. The idea of the angels having a war up in heaven and fighting with each other is also a really, really cool one to me. I love the idea of all of this fighting going on between the angels and angel politics and things like that, and I really wish that we got to see it. I understand why we don't, but I love that that's there in the background, and I almost wish that it was explored more because I find the idea of that really interesting. And as someone who was still kind of is a Twilight fan, I was a bigger Twilight fan in 8th grade, freshman year of high school, but I still kind of feel connected to it for nostalgic reasons. So I really enjoyed the episode making fun of Twilight though. I thought it was hilarious, and I really loved that they did that. And I wrote down fragments of an exchange, and I just lost my place in my notes, but I wrote down fragments of an exchange about when they're trying to get into the girl's computer and they need a password, and they're like, try Lautner, he's a werewolf, and kids everywhere, and then asking how many T's are in Pattinson. It was hilarious to me. Dean being cured from being a vampire was also interesting. I totally knew it was going to happen just because there was no way that Dean was going to stay a vampire, and obviously he was going to survive it. So it wasn't surprising, but the idea of there being a cure is interesting to me. I also really loved the episode with the fairies. Honestly, right now I'm having this moment where I didn't realize how much I loved a lot of these episodes until I started doing this review, and I realized that there were all these episodes that I really loved in this set of episodes, and I hadn't fully realized how awesome I thought some of these episodes were until now. But I loved the episode with the fairies because I've mentioned this several times in the past in different videos and on my blog and stuff about how I didn't read anything with fairies until I read this one book about fairies. And prior to me reading that book, I'd heard other people talk about fairies and things, and how they were interested in primarily books, fairy books, because there's not that many stories focused on fairies from movies and TV shows and things like that. But they read different fairy books. They were talking about how good they were, and I became kind of intrigued. So I finally read a fairy book and absolutely loved it. And now I have this slight obsession with fairies and the idea of them. And I still haven't read all that much, but I have this need for more now. And so I loved them showing up in Supernatural, and I loved that episode. And then the last episode in this set of episodes that I'm reviewing is where Dean becomes Death for a day, and I really enjoyed that episode for a lot of reasons. I love the fact that Dean has to confront the fact that people have to die. It's just a fact of life. Even the little girl and things like that, it's terrible, but also has to happen sometimes. And also the fact that Death, as one of the four horsemen, has been when he was first introduced, was this huge, terrifying sort of character because he's one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, and now he's almost humanized kind of a bit in that episode, and he's not as scary, which I wasn't expecting to happen at the beginning of the episode. That was really interesting to me, and I really liked that. I also liked how there was a bit more explanation of how the Reaper versus Death thing goes, but I do, it's a bit confusing now because Dean was with that one Reaper the entire time, but obviously there's tons of Reapers, and if Death has to personally touch every single person who dies, and he has a Reaper with him when he does that, then I don't understand why there needs to be a ton of Reapers, because if Death has to do that amount of work, then he could just have one Reaper with him at all times. So that's a bit confusing to me how exactly that works, but I did really like that episode for how it kind of developed Death, which I wasn't expecting to happen. Kind of reminds me of The Book Thief, because that book's narrated by Death in a way, but I also loved how it forced Dean to kind of think about Death in a way that, because normally Dean's kind of faced death a lot of times, but it's in a supernatural sort of way, and not so much as a real, this is what most humans die from sort of way, and I think that was kind of covered in that episode, and I liked that. That episode also ends with Sam getting his soul back, and like I mentioned earlier, I don't feel like I have that many big spoilers for what happens next. I don't really think I know anything about the rest of season 6, so I don't know what's going to happen following this. So I look forward to, and I haven't watched anything past this point yet, so I look forward to doing that and finding out what happens now that Sam has his soul back and everything like that. I wasn't expecting it to happen that early in the season. That was one of those things that I kind of felt would be dragged out for the entire season. So I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen now with the rest of the season. But I will see you guys later. Bye.